If you have to beg for someone to value you, you've already lost. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, but also the most liberating, because it means the power has never been in the hands of the person who ignores you, but in yours. And yet, here you are, wondering why someone who once seemed interested now acts with indifference, why that person who once sought your presence now feels comfortable with your absence. Maybe it's a child who no longer calls, a partner who has stopped showing affection, or a friend who only appears when they need something. And the worst part isn't that they ignore you, it's that you're still there, waiting, as if their validation defines your worth. Let me tell you something I saw years ago. An old man used to sit every afternoon on the same park bench, feeding the birds with crumbs from his bread. At first, dozens of birds would gather around him, pecking at the ground eagerly. But over time, they grew used to the routine, and fewer came. One day, the old man decided to change his approach. He stopped bringing bread, stopped sitting on the same bench, stopped being predictable. And then something curious happened. The birds began to look for him. They perched on nearby trees, watching, waiting for him to reappear. What they had taken for granted had vanished, and suddenly, his presence held value. When people belittle you, when they leave you on the sidelines as if your existence is just a minor detail, the worst thing you can do is try to regain their attention by begging for scraps of affection. Desperation is the scent of abandonment, and when someone detects it in you, their interest disappears completely. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. Your peace of mind depends not on what others do or fail to do, but on what you decide to allow in your own mind. And yet, you keep letting other people's indifference upset you, keep wasting your energy trying to prove to someone that you deserve to be treated with respect, when in reality, the only validation that matters is the one you owe yourself. If you've been taken for granted, it's because you've made yourself too accessible. If they don't value you, it's because they've never truly felt the possibility of losing you. It's human nature. We take for granted what's always available and cherish what we feel we might lose. And here's where the real key lies. If you want to change how they see you, first you have to change how you present yourself. This isn't about pretending to be disinterested or playing manipulation games, but about understanding a simple and powerful truth. Those who don't know how to appreciate, learn when presence turns into absence. I'm not telling you to walk away with resentment or become cold and distant. I'm telling you to walk away with dignity, to focus your energy on what truly nurtures you, to stop offering explanations and waiting in silence. Because there's a secret weapon in Stoic philosophy against ingratitude, and it's not about demanding anything from anyone. It's about proving, through your own actions, that you don't need anyone else to recognize your own worth. Are you ready to use it? If what you want is for someone to realize your worth, the key isn't in shouting it out, but in staying silent. Not in demanding, but in stopping the habit of giving by default. Not in chasing, but in learning the power of indifference. This isn't pride or revenge, it's the purest form of self-respect. Because nothing unsettles someone who ignores you more than realizing their absence doesn't affect you, that their indifference no longer has power over you. And while this sounds simple in theory, in practice, it's hard. It's hard because we've been taught that showing interest is synonymous with affection, when more often than not, it's just a sign of dependency. It's hard because our ego whispers that if we try a little harder, we might get the other person to react. But what persistence really achieves is not being noticed, but being tolerated. And you're not here to be a tolerated presence, you're here to be someone whose absence is felt. The problem is that we've been conditioned to believe that other people's attention is a validation of our worth. Since childhood, we learn that praise means we did something right, that an approving look gives us permission to feel worthy. We grow up waiting to be seen, waiting for someone to recognize us, as if existence only made sense when there were witnesses. But Stoic philosophy tells us otherwise. Epictetus taught that true freedom comes when you stop expecting the world to behave the way you want and learn to live in peace with what is. And what is, more often than not, is other people's indifference. What is, many times, is the distance others impose without you being able to do anything about it. But what also is, if you choose to accept it, is the opportunity to reclaim your power. Because indifference isn't just a strategy, it's a shield. When you apply it wisely, not as an act of coldness, but as an act of self-love, you become someone unshakable. And this has an unexpected effect on those who used to ignore you. Suddenly, they realize they no longer occupy so much space in your mind, that you no longer react the way they expected, that they can't control your emotions with their presence or absence. And that, for many, is disconcerting, because they were used to you always being there, to their indifference hurting you, to their attitude defining yours. But here's the crucial point. It's not about acting indifferent toward them to punish or manipulate them. It's about applying indifference to free yourself. Because when you manage to stop letting other people's behavior affect you, you become someone impossible to tear down. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you learn to feel without being controlled by it. It doesn't mean you don't care about others. It means you care about yourself first. And deep down, that's what most unsettles those who expected to keep seeing you as someone always available, always waiting, always reacting. Old age, for many, becomes fertile ground for the need to be acknowledged. With retirement, with children who no longer depend on you, with the spaces you once occupied that now seem to shrink, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking attention as a way to reaffirm that you still matter. But here's the big truth. You don't need anyone to value you to know you still have meaning. You don't need someone to call you to know you're still present. You don't need someone to regret ignoring you to know you're still valuable. And when you truly understand this, indifference stops being a tool to provoke reactions and becomes a natural state of serenity. Because nothing weighs heavier on the conscience of someone who has ignored you than seeing that their indifference hasn't managed to break you, that you've moved forward without expecting anything, without resentment, without sadness, that you've learned to be at peace with yourself without depending on external validation. And when that happens, when someone who took you for granted realizes their attitude no longer has power over you, that's when true change occurs. Not because you were waiting for it, but because you stopped needing it. If you've understood by now that insisting only weakens you and that well-applied indifference is a powerful shield, then it's time to talk about the root of the problem. Because if someone treats you like you're their second option, it's because at some point you gave them permission to do so. No one enters a relationship feeling they can ignore you without consequences. No one places you on the sidelines without first learning that you'll always be there, available, waiting. And if you've ever wondered why some people seem to receive more respect and consideration without even asking, while others have to fight to be noticed, the answer is simple. It's all in how they position themselves. Those who see themselves as valuable impose their absence when they are not treated as they deserve. Those who doubt their own worth remain present despite being disregarded. The underlying problem is that many times we are more afraid of losing someone than of losing our dignity. And that fear makes us endure slights, unjustified silences, a lack of reciprocity that over time becomes a habit. But what isn't said is that this habit not only affects you emotionally, but also defines the kind of relationships you attract. When you allow someone to treat you with indifference without any consequence, you are training that person to keep doing it. It's like a dog that learns it will always get fed no matter what. If one day it's mistreated, but receives the same attention the next, it won't learn to change its behavior. And this isn't just a psychological principle, it's a universal rule of how human dynamics work. That's why the only thing that truly changes the attitude of someone who has taken you for granted is uncertainty. Not a conversation where you explain how you feel, not a plea for things to be different, but the real possibility that you could leave and never return. And this doesn't mean putting on a show or manipulating anyone. It simply means that if you don't receive the treatment you deserve, you walk away. Not with anger, not with reproach, but with an unwavering calm that shows your presence is a privilege, not an obligation. Marcus Aurelius understood this centuries ago when he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, because the one who ignores expects you to beg, the one who belittles expects you to keep showing up, the one who doesn't value you expects you to accept the bare minimum. But when you do exactly the opposite of what they expect, their world is shaken." Try it. Stop calling the person who always postpones your plans. Stop texting first to those who only respond when it suits them. Stop chasing those who never have time for you. Don't do it out of resentment. Do it with the certainty that you don't need to cling to anyone. And then watch. See how suddenly someone who was always too busy finds time, how someone who never replied now asks about you, how someone who took you for granted begins to feel your absence as a real void, not because you played with their mind, but because you proved you are enough on your own. Because respect, like trust, cannot be demanded, it must be inspired. If these words resonate with you, tell me from which country you're listening and write in the comments, "I am enough on my own." And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. What's coming in the next few minutes could completely change the way you see your own worth and how to make others recognize it. Stay until the end, because the final lesson is not only the most powerful, but also the one that will truly make a difference in your life. If you've understood that respect isn't demanded but inspired, then it's time to face the greatest silent enemy in all of this: the false belief that just because you've given a lot, it will be returned to you in the same measure. It's a mental trap, an illusion sold to us from childhood, reinforced by the idea that life is fair and that those who sow love will reap love in the same proportion. And while this would make sense in an ideal world, reality is different. Affection isn't a bank account where you deposit years of devotion and one day withdraw the same amount in gratitude and recognition. The truth is harsher, and if you don't understand it in time, you'll keep waiting for those who ignore you today to wake up tomorrow with the desire to make it up to you. And that rarely happens. The problem is that we've turned our relationships into invisible contracts filled with expectations. When you raised your children, when you were there for someone during their hardest moments, when you gave without limits, a part of you assumed that effort would be remembered, that your dedication would return to you in the form of attention, companionship, and reciprocity. But here's the hard lesson many avoid accepting. Just because you were unconditional with someone doesn't mean that person has the capacity, the willingness, or the awareness to give you the same in return. Not because they're bad, but because, more often than not, the world revolves around itself and not around what you've done for them. And when you realize this too late, the blow is double. First, because you discover you've been living with an expectation that will never be fulfilled. And second, because that disappointment fills you with bitterness and resentment. And the last thing someone who has given so much deserves is to live their years with a poisoned heart. Seneca said that the greatest wisdom lies in giving without expecting anything in return. But this teaching isn't a call to resignation, it's a call to freedom. Because when you understand that no one is obligated to repay you for what you did, you stop depending on others to feel at peace. You no longer need to be recognized. You no longer suffer from absences. You no longer waste time waiting for apologies that will never come. And that's when you reclaim your power, because you stop living in debt to your own expectations and start living on your own terms. Many reach this stage of life carrying the weight of disappointment they don't know how to release. They feel betrayed because they gave love and received distance because they were present, and now they've been forgotten. But disappointment only exists when the hope for something better is still alive. And here's where you have to ask yourself the most important question. Are you going to keep waiting for others to realize your worth? Or are you going to start living with the certainty that your worth never depended on them? Because once you let go of the need for others to act as you believe they should, you set yourself free. And in that freedom, in that absence of expectations, is where you find true peace. There's a truth few dare to admit. Disappearing is often the only way to be noticed. But this isn't about throwing a tantrum or staging an emotional outburst, expecting them to chase after you. It's about a genuine, internal, profound withdrawal. One where you not only distance yourself physically, but also detach mentally and emotionally from those who haven't valued you. And this is what's hard to understand, because all our lives we've been told that love is patience, that persistence proves affection, that if you stay around long enough, sooner or later, they'll realize what you mean to them. But the reality is different. Respect doesn't grow from persistence. It grows from absence. Here's the key point. When you keep making yourself available to someone who ignores you, what you're truly communicating is that nothing in your life is more valuable than their attention. That no matter how much they neglect you, you'll still be there. That their indifference carries no consequences. And when someone gets used to the idea that their disregard changes nothing, why would they ever change their attitude? It's not cruelty, it's habit. They get used to you being the one who calls, the one who reaches out, the one who keeps the relationship afloat, while they barely make the slightest effort. And every time you allow it, you reinforce the idea that they can continue treating you the same way. The problem is that this dynamic slowly destroys your dignity. At first, it might just be a small sacrifice, a message you send even though you've noticed their replies are getting shorter, a visit you make even though you're always the one suggesting it, a favor you grant even though you never get one in return. But over time, these gestures leave invisible scars. You start feeling lesser, you start believing maybe you're not that important, maybe you're the problem. And that's when the situation becomes dangerous. Because when you start doubting your own worth, you become dependent on the validation of those who least deserve it. And that's when you disappear, but not in the right way. You disappear within yourself, losing your essence, becoming someone you barely recognize. But this can be reversed, though not with pretty words or instant solutions. The only way to change the dynamic is by truly withdrawing, expecting nothing, without resentment, without the secret hope that they'll come looking for you. It's a decision you make because you choose yourself, because you decide that being available to someone who doesn't value you is a form of betrayal to yourself. And this requires a completely different mindset. You have to stop thinking in terms of what others should do and start focusing on what you choose to allow. It's not about punishing them, it's about freeing yourself. It's not about making them understand anything, it's about you understanding it first. When you learn to walk away without fear, something powerful happens. You realize the world doesn't stop just because you stopped insisting. You are still the same person with the same worth, even if they never react. And if they do, if they suddenly start missing you, calling you, wondering what happened, then what you gain is not just their attention, but their respect. But if they don't, you haven't lost anything either. Because in that case, the only thing you've lost is a one-sided relationship that never should have existed in the first place. Imagine yourself a few years from now, sitting in the same chair, in the same house, with the same thoughts spinning around in your head. It's just another afternoon, another one of those days where you stare at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes. Another day where you repeat the same gestures, the same hopes, the same memories. You keep asking yourself what you did wrong, at what point the people who once seemed to care so much stopped needing you. You keep searching for explanations that no longer matter, clinging to the idea that at some point they'll realize what you mean to them. But time keeps moving, and each day is just a copy of the one before. Until one day, you realize you've spent years waiting for others to change, without noticing that you were the one trapped in an endless waiting game. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's the only thing that will set you free. If someone has taken you for granted, it's because you allowed them to. There's no mystery to it, no cosmic injustice, no tragic destiny. Life is not a novel where the good character suffers, but eventually everything balances out and they receive their reward. Life is what you choose to accept and what you choose to let go of. And if you haven't learned to set boundaries, if you haven't understood that true presence is valued only when there's a real possibility of absence, then you'll remain right here, in the same chair, in the same house, with the same unanswered questions. Think about the people you respect the most. They're not the ones who beg, not the ones who complain, not the ones who cling. They are the ones who are their own masters, who don't negotiate their dignity, who don't beg for affection. But to reach that point, you have to let go of the idea that the past owes you something, that others will one day understand what you did for them and make it up to you. Accept that it may never happen. Accept that gratitude cannot be imposed, that love cannot be demanded, that reciprocity is not a guaranteed right. And once you accept this, do the only thing you truly can. Move forward. Not with resentment, not with sadness, but with the resolve of someone who has understood that their worth doesn't depend on the memory of others, but on who they decide to be at every moment of their life. Now tell me, do you really want to stay in the same chair, in the same waiting game, with the same story repeating itself in your head? Or maybe it's time to stand up, to change the direction of your steps, to prove, if only once in your life, that you don't need to be acknowledged by anyone to start living the way you deserve. If you've made it this far, it's because deep down, you already know the truth. You know that no one is coming to rescue you from someone else's indifference, that no apology can give you back lost time, that continuing to wait for recognition only prolongs the wound. You know that the only thing you can truly control is your own attitude toward what life has shown you. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you stay where you've always been, repeating the same story of disappointment and waiting? Or will you finally understand that the final word has always been yours? Because that's what no one ever told you. The real power isn't in making others change, but in deciding what you tolerate and what you leave behind. You've spent too much time thinking about what others should do, how they should treat you, what would be fair after all you've given. But justice in human relationships doesn't work the way you think. There's no invisible scale that will eventually balance the emotional debt of those who have ignored you. There's no natural law forcing anyone to value you just because you were there when they needed you. The only thing that exists is the decision you make today, to keep begging for scraps of attention or to become someone who doesn't need to be seen to know they exist. And this is where everything changes, because the moment you let go of the need for someone else to validate your presence, you become unbreakable. You no longer walk with the weight of expectation, you no longer carry the resentment of what never was. You don't wait for a call that never comes. You don't ask yourself why you were pushed aside. You simply move on, with dignity, with calm, with the certainty that your life is not defined by who misses you, but by what you choose to do with the time you have left. There's no magic in this, only clarity. The clarity that those who don't value you don't deserve your anguish. The clarity that those who play with your presence don't deserve your waiting. The clarity that the only person who truly needs to acknowledge you is yourself. So now tell me, what are you going to do with this truth? Because the decision, now and always, has been in your hands. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you has been shaken. Not many reach the end when they're confronted with the truth. It's easier to close your eyes, keep waiting, tell yourself things will change on their own. But you're not one of those who looks for excuses. You're someone who seeks answers. And the answers, as harsh as they may be, have always been right in front of you. No one is going to give you the place you haven't given yourself. No one is going to wake up one day with a sudden desire to make up for their indifference. Either you make the decision today to stop depending on others' validation, or you'll remain tied to an endless wait. You're not here to beg for recognition. You're not here to settle for the scraps of anyone's attention. You're here because you deserve to live with dignity, with respect, with the certainty that your worth doesn't depend on how many messages are answered or how many times they ask about you. And when you truly understand this, when you stop making your life revolve around those who never made theirs revolve around you, you regain something more important than any relationship, your own peace. Because in the end, the one who loses the most is not the one who leaves, but the one who failed to value the person who was there. If these words have resonated with you, I want you to leave a simple but powerful phrase in the comments. I choose my peace. Write it along with your country, because I want to know where you're listening from and who are the ones who truly understand the message. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden, a space for those who have decided to wake up, for those who have understood that their life is in no one's hands but their own. If this content has helped you, subscribe and join a community that doesn't seek easy comfort, but real tools to live with strength and serenity. Share this video with those who need to hear it, because sometimes a single phrase at the right moment can change the course of a life. And if you still want more, if you feel this is just the beginning of what you need to understand, here on the screen, you'll find 2 videos that might give you the answers you've been searching for. Don't stop here, keep moving forward. Because change doesn't begin when you hear the truth. It begins when you decide to do something with it.